You know, I can always tell when the internet's getting bored. They start inventing vaporware. So let's talk about the Switch 2 Lite and the Switch 2 OLED on this edition of Switch 2 News Direct. First off, it's an easy target. It's an easy prediction to make, and there's so many people out there that want to be the first person to break that story or tell about a new piece of hardware that's coming out that they just investigate everything they possibly can, look at every little notation, and then come up with some ridiculous way to link that to some new piece of hardware so they can be the first one that told everybody it's coming out. But let's be realistic about this. We all know a Switch 2 Lite is eventually going to come out. A Switch 2 OLED is eventually going to come out. The question is when. So it's very simple for someone to look up some specs, or I think someone was on the Nintendo website and saw some code that linked to another model of Switch 2 that didn't exist, and lo and behold, it brought up a picture of a Switch 2, which the picture is not even really a picture of a Switch 2. To me, it looks like the exact same art style or the exact same clip art font or whatever you want to call it that they made for the Switch 2 that's on the Switch itself when you go into the Switch 2 menus. I'm not doubting that there's another model that's going to come out and Nintendo didn't have some foresight to say, hey, let's put something on our website. Let's have it already there. So when we bring this model out, we have somewhere to put it. But I don't think it indicates that any new model is coming out anytime soon. I mean, very simple to make a prediction of something we know is going to happen. On to my next point, component shortages. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it is a big story in the news that all these big AI infrastructure warehouses or whatever you call them are going to suck up all the available components for PCs, handheld systems, anything that requires RAM or CPUs. They're talking a component shortage. So production on a new variant such as a Switch Lite or a Switch OLED, I think is going to be a tough sell anytime in the next year, possibly longer. Now, who knows? This AI component shortage may just be hype to up the prices of components. I mean, it won't be the first time that something like this has happened, but if there truly is going to be a component shortage, that's really going to hinder the production of any new type of console or any new variant of a console. So I don't see a Switch 2 Lite or a Switch 2 OLED in our future anytime soon due to a possible component shortage. On to my next point, conclusion versus facts. The facts are someone saw a different model type listed on, I think, Nintendo's website, onboarding website. I don't know exactly where it was, but bottom line is, what they found and the conclusion that they came to me, just doesn't really work. Yes, like I said earlier, I believe a new model is going to come out sometime in the future, but I don't believe someone found the holy grail of, oh my God, the Switch 2 Lite's coming out. Oh my God, a Switch 2 OLED's coming out. Also, I think Switch Up, which I'm kind of surprised these guys came up with this particular conclusion because they seem a little bit more reputable, in my opinion, than to come up with some goofy leak from a picture of an ad. So there's an ad out there that Nintendo put out, I believe it's for Animal Crossings, and it shows a Switch 2, and then the picture on screen is actually going all the way to the edges of the bezel, just like the OLED does compared to the regular Switch. Now, I don't think for a second that that proves that there's an OLED, because if you look at all of my thumbnails, I actually have a Switch 2 on my thumbnail in the background. And every picture that I put on the face of the Switch 2, I stretch all the way to the edges to make the picture pop so you can see it better. And there's no doubt in my mind that's exactly what the marketer or whoever was involved with creating that ad did for that ad. They just blew the picture up as big as they could so you could see it better. End of story. On to my next point, zero incentive for Nintendo. Nintendo has absolutely nothing to gain by bringing out a Switch 2 Lite or a Switch 2 OLED this year and maybe even next year. Now, the Switch 2 Lite, I could see being a thing next year, but this year, I just don't see it happening. We're fresh off the release of the Switch 2. It's doing very well. We have third-party developers on board. We have all kinds of games coming out, a very good user base, and they're just still trying to get that system in people's hands. I think bringing a Switch 2 Lite out or a Switch 2 OLED, is going to piss off anybody who bought a regular Switch 2 on the OLED side of it. I don't think a Switch 2 Lite would do that, but an OLED would piss off anybody who just bought a Switch 2. A Switch 2 Lite, I just think would convolute things a little bit. I think Nintendo is just going to focus on the regular Switch 2, and then down the road, we'll start bringing the different models out. So I really don't see anything in it for Nintendo to actually be thinking about bringing that out now. Moving on, zero supply chain evidence. Now, anytime any company is manufacturing some type of device or anything, any move they make that involves getting components, getting other factories involved. Basically, anything that involves money in production is going to be red flagged, and you're going to see some type of article on it in DigiTimes or Bloomberg. Somebody's going to let the cat out of the bag that this big company is doing this big thing. And we have heard absolutely nothing. And trust me, anything Nintendo does gets pressed. Nintendo farts sideways and there's 25 articles about it. So we would see something from DigiTimes or Bloomberg if Nintendo was ramping up production or even thinking about ramping up production. So to me, that's the big one. That's the number one. We're going to see something from DigiTimes or Bloomberg whenever Nintendo decides to ramp up whatever they're ramping up. So that's pretty much my reason why I don't buy into any Switch Lite or any Switch 2 OLED hype at the present time. I'm saying 2027 is my prediction. You're not going to see anything this year with a new variant of the Switch 2. Nintendo's going to have a tough enough time in this economy to get the Switch 2 out there in people's hands to really dominate the console wars, which again, at this point right now, they're pretty close. Anywho, I digress. Enough talk about games. Let's talk about playing games. And our daily deal of the day is WWE 2K25 for the Nintendo Switch 2, $24.99 at Best Buy Online and Best Buy stores. And as you can see right here, I purchased the game for $24.99 at my local Best Buy. Keep this in mind. This game is 100% code in the box. They do not make a version that has a cartridge or a cart or a key card, what the hell they call it, in the box itself. Now, WWE 2K25 is an excellent wrestling game. There has not been a good wrestling game on the Nintendo Switch or Switch 2 unless we're talking about some of these older retro style ones that are on the eShop. And again, even then there's only maybe one or two that are good. And of course, this is actually a big third-party wrestling game. They did an excellent job on the Switch 2. It kind of blew most people away when they played it, and that's the reason I bought it for $24.99. I would not buy this game for more than $24.99 because I'm not that much into wrestling anymore unless it's some old school games, but this was very intriguing at that price, so I grabbed it, and I suggest you grab it too, and I'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Switch 2 News Direct.